in the muster field right now, where approximately 400 militiamen had mustered up, gathered up, and they were evaluating the current situation with the incoming threat of British regulars. And at this point in time, on the morning of April 19th, 1775, as 400 militiamen were here on this hilltop discussing what their next move is going to be, about 3 companies of British regulars had already seized and now control the North Bridge. So this is the North Bridge, where the 400 Colonial Militiamen were actually standing right where they would have stood, and on the opposite bank would have been the 100 British regulars that were tasked with holding this bridge. Here is the site of the shot heard around the world, and this is where the first British casualties of the American Revolutionary War took place. April 1775 was made the first forcible resistance to British aggression. On the opposite bank stood the American militia. Here stood the invading army, and on the spot the first of the enemy fell in the War of that Revolution, which gave independence to these United States. In gratitude to God and in the love of freedom, this is where Battle Road begins, when fresh colonial militiamen from Reading, Chelmsford, and Billerica laid the first ambush upon the British regulars. It also marks the site of the very first offensive action for the colonial militiamen. After the British decided to skirt on the side of Brooks Hill instead of taking the hill completely from the colonists because their casualties were just too high and it would have been too costly of a move, they skirted around the side of Brooks Hill, which actually put them here, where there is a tiny little, I don't know if you can see it, tiny little river or stream, if you will, that crosses, and there was a bridge that went over the stream that they had to cross to obviously keep moving, keep chugging closer to Boston, closer to safety. So when a unit like that has to cross a bridge, they pull in their flankers, they pull them in back to the main column so the whole main column can cross the bridge, and as soon as the flankers get across the bridge, they'll put their flankers back out to protect their left and right flanks. Now, the colonial militiamen knew this. They knew that if they were going to cross this bridge, they had to pull in their flankers, and then at that moment, they were going to be vulnerable on their flanks. At that turn, that sharp 90-degree turn, where that angle became known as the bloody angle because of the high price that the British ended up paying. I'm standing legitimately in the middle of Battle Road, which going that way is where the British would have passed on their way to Concord, and on this same road is where they passed in full retreat heading back to Boston. And this place behind me is known as the Hartford Tavern. Family had 5 sons. 3 of the 5 of their sons, Samuel, John, and Isaac, were all part of the Lincoln Minuteman Company here in Lincoln, Mass. And on the morning of April 19th, 1775, the 3 of them were part of the 400 that gathered together on the muster field and ended up fighting the British at the North Bridge. Now, their 4th son, Jonas, it's not historically documented, but he too may have been with his 3 brothers and may have fought the British at the North Bridge, as well as the numerous ambushes that the colonial militia ended up setting the rest of the way of Battle Road for the British. Because Battle Road stretches for 18 miles. From Concord to Boston, the colonial militia, as well as Minutemen companies, continue to ambush and harass the British column all the way back to their way at Boston. Now, the Hartwell family also had a 5th son, the oldest, who lived in Princeton at the time and was part of the Princeton militia. And he too fought the British, but about a week later during the Siege of Boston and at the Battle of Bunker Hill. So just to think that one family, the Hartwell family, had all 5 sons who were actively armed during the day of April 19th, 1775, but 4 out of the 5 sons saw combat. Is the actual capture site of Paul Revere, which happened in the first hour of April 19th, 1775, as Paul Revere, William Dawes, and Dr. Samuel Prescott carried the alarm to Concord to alert the militia there that the British were coming. Now, during the capture attempt by a British patrol who discovered Revere, Dawes, and Prescott, Paul Revere was captured, was thoroughly questioned, and released around 2:30 that morning. He started making his way back to Lexington. Dawes turned around immediately before he could be captured and continued back to Lexington on horse. And Dr. Samuel Prescott, who was of the area and knew the local grounds, actually rode his horse through the woods to Concord, which in the middle of the night, I don't even know how you do that. So the 3 alarm riders were almost captured here, and Paul Revere's midnight ride ended here. And it was at this point, between a point called the Bluff and this hill here, Fisk Hill, where the British regulars, their lines just completely dissolved. And now, shortly after the British regulars, the main column, got past Fisk Hill, British reinforcements from Boston did show up, and they did escort the remaining British troops back to Boston. Now, from all the way from the North Bridge in Concord, all the way the 18 miles, the whole stretch back to Boston, they were plagued just by Colonial Militiamen and Minutemen companies. They fought the British regulars the entire way back to Boston, which actually ends up setting up the siege of Boston. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up my time here at Minuteman State Park here in Concord, Massachusetts. And now, if you enjoyed this content, please give the video a like, and please consider subscribing to the channel, as it helps the channel out. And as for me, I am back on the run, and I'll see you guys next episode, next week, same time, same channel. I feel like the use of caskets on the front page here just wouldn't fly in today's world.